Hi, I'm Kara Murphy, and this is Money with Murphy. Earlier this year, one of the main risks we flagged for the market was the growing size of government debt. For decades, the US government was able to grow the amount it borrows while seeing the amount it paid on that debt decline, all because of falling interest rates. Now, with interest rates higher and sticky, the amount the US government spends to service its debt is rising rapidly. So why does that matter? Because fiscal instability can ripple through the economy. It can affect interest rates, limit the money available for businesses and consumers, and slow long-term growth if left unchecked. Recently, the House passed a sweeping proposal that tackles tax policy, spending, AI regulations, more, all bundled into one big, beautiful bill. The Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, released their analysis of the proposal. Their takeaway? If passed as is, the bill would add nearly $2.5 trillion to the national deficit over the next 10 years. That would raise the deficit from about 6.3% of GDP today to an estimated 7.5% by 2034. Let's take a look at what's driving that increase and other factors that could impact that forecast. Most of the increase in the deficit comes from tax cuts. The bill proposes to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent, eliminate taxes on tips and overtime, and raise the cap on state and local tax deductions. The CBO estimates that these changes together would reduce federal tax revenue by about $4 trillion. On the flip side, the bill also includes roughly $1.5 trillion in spending reductions. But it's important to really understand what that means. These cuts don't mean spending is going down year over year. The reductions are cuts to initial planned spending increases. So for instance, if last year you spent $1,000 on clothes and this year plan to spend $1,500, then you decide to limit it to $1,300, you're still increasing your spending, but not by as much. The bill also includes a $5 trillion increase to the debt ceiling, which essentially gives the government room to borrow more in order to fund previously approved spending. However, it's important to remember the CBO uses static assumptions in their analysis, meaning they don't consider factors such as potential economic growth from tax cuts or planned deregulation. Instead, the reference point for the deficit is their initial projection for GDP growth released in January. That holds growth steady at 1.8% over the next 10 years. One other source of revenue not acknowledged in the CBO assumptions: tariffs. The CBO released a separate analysis on the impact of tariffs on the deficit, which suggested that tariffs could reduce the deficit by $2.8 trillion over the next 10 years after accounting for economic impacts. Regardless, what's not disputed is that the U.S. debt will continue to grow. This is important for buyers and holders of U.S. Treasuries. If GDP is expected to grow slowly compared to the increase in debt, this will put upward pressure on interest rates, further compounding the fiscal issue via increased interest expense. If, however, the tax cuts and other proposed ideas such as deregulation can stimulate economic growth so that the economy grows faster than debt, U.S. Treasuries could become more attractive. One big issue the bill doesn't address is non-discretionary spending, things like Social Security, Medicare, and interest on that debt. These actually make up the majority of federal spending and are the toughest to reform. Without touching these, it's hard to see how we grow our way out of this challenge. At the end of the day, the path of U.S. debt and interest rates will depend heavily on future growth and policy choices. That's why it's important for investors to maintain a diversified fixed income portfolio, one that's spread across different maturities and types of issuers. In an environment where fiscal risks are rising and rates may stay elevated, this diversification can help manage volatility and uncover opportunities no matter how the policy winds shift. So until next time, invest wisely and live richly.